All right. Good morning to those of you on the East Coast. Good morning also to those of you on the West Coast. I'm your host, Brandon Choi, host and co-creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited, and I'm joined by.
Jerome Bourgeois, co-creator, co-founder, Movers and Shakers Unlimited. How's everything, man? I heard in a couple of days someone's having a birthday.
Yeah. A couple of days, another trip around. Another 365 days. Be a year older. But it should be fun. And I know we had some festivities the other day, and shout out to everyone who was there. And additionally, I know you always make the joke of what is it? Freebies, birthday freebies.
Oh yeah, man, you better get them, man. You better get
Yeah,
the
so
freebie.
we'll see what goes down in a couple of days and where I'm able to hit. I don't know. Maybe
Gotta
I'll
spread
make
them out. You spread them out, man. Spread them
a
out.
post about it, about what places, wager of how many places I'm able to hit on my actual birthday.
We'll put the link back up again, because when we did it for my birthday, I'm telling you, hey man, you gotta take advantage, man. Take advantage. It's capitalism at its best.
With that out of the way, guys, welcome to this edition of This Week in Review, the show in which we give you the news bits, if you will, that have happened over the past week. We know that you guys are busy, so we try to do our best to give you some of the news bits that you may have missed in the last 7 days. With that out of the way, actually, let's get into some of our minutes before we hop into the stories. Just know that, of course, if you're watching us live, we appreciate you guys checking us out live, but just know that you can also check us out after this episode is aired using that hashtag This Week in Review. So that's TWnRMNSU. So that's This Week in Review, Movers and Shakers Unlimited. So as I said, just to keep, track of the goings on, if you will, of, our archive episodes. You can keep track of it using that hashtag, and you can also be a part of the conversation, whether you're doing it live or if you have thoughts, afterwards, you can include that hashtag as well. Aside from that, know that you can also be a Patreon supporter. So let me put that link up now. So we do have a Patreon page that you guys can be a part of. We have some cool perks in play if you want to be a Patreon supporter with us. And with that being said, as always, want to give a shout out to Jerome Bourgeois.
Shout out Joelle. Sis.
There we go. I was waiting.
She just had her birthday last week. Like we already shout out. I think she's still waiting on my gift because it's Korean mail. It's like the international mail is slow over there. But anyway.
All right.
But anyway, though, yeah, it was April birthdays. Hey, you guys, we getting good weather now too. This is like the good weather.
Finally,
not too humid, and it's getting the 70s, 80s. So hey.
And a lot of the places are starting to open up. We're starting slowly to have things, open up. So that's good too, on top of the good weather. So hopping into the first story that we have. So over the course of this week, we got news that Hulu is doing a limited series for Sammy Davis Jr. regarding the life of Sammy Davis Jr. and the ultra talented Elijah Kelly. And just as they said, even in the article, the multi-hyphenated, so, the multi-talented Elijah Kelly is set to star as Sammy Davis Jr. Now, the official logline, as it's stated in the Deadline article, is that, Sammy Davis Jr. rose from childhood stardom on the vaudeville stage to become one of the most famous African-American entertainers of the 1950s and 60s. Of course, being a part of Frank Sinatra's Rat Pack. And at the same time, he spent most of his career surrounded by controversy and ridicule over, affairs that he had with white film stars, his 1960 marriage with Swedish actress May Britt, his conversion to Judaism, his closeness to, the Kennedys, and as well as, his problems with alcohol and drugs. So, Jerome, we have, such an iconic figure such as Sammy Davis Jr. And as I said, Kelly is, a multifaceted artist in terms of, the talents that he brings to the table. What are your thoughts on, the news of this limited series?
Yeah, I just thought it was interesting because what was I going to say? Oh yeah, and also it's our 57th episode, so thanks for supporting and joining us again. But yeah, I know. But yeah, I just thought it was interesting too because not only is we getting another limited series biopic, it's also this Lee Daniels is a part of it, and I mean, I've liked the stuff that Lee Daniels has put out. I mean, from Precious and Empire and The Butler, and I mean, he produced some other films, like Monsters Ball and was The Woodsman. So no, I mean, it's good. It's good that we're seeing some of these stories get get developed and turned into actual TV projects or limited series or films. I mean, I do remember there was. I was actually looking up again. There was a limited series. I think it was on HBO. Yeah, it was the Rat Pack with like Ray Liotta, Don Cheadle. I think Don Cheadle played Sammy Davis Jr. I didn't see that, but I mean, it looked like it was pretty good. I'm sure it was pretty decent or pretty good because I mean, HBO. It's hard for HBO to do any wrong. But that was more focused on the Rat Pack. So this is interesting. How it's going to be focused just on Sammy Davis Jr. And what I'm starting to realize is not every maybe not every story needs to be a movie sometimes, because maybe if you want to really go in depth and show more of the details of that person's life or something, you can tell more in a limited series. So I'm sure they're going to be able to really go into like some obviously of course the musical ascent of Sammy Davis Jr., but also like they were saying in the article. I mean, at that time, being a black artist, performing and converting to Judaism, marrying a white woman or whatever, like there's a lot of conflict and drama there, and just from that perspective, and it's good to just see. It's just interesting seeing the different types of characters that are getting portrayed, the different types of actual people being portrayed in these different projects, these different shows or limited series, and it gives you kind of I just think it gives good insight to people to see like there's not everybody lived the same type of life even back in the day, and like you're gonna get a different perspective, and people were treated differently based on like maybe the type of music they were doing or how political they were or how political they weren't. Because I mean, things that maybe were not as controversial to the white community back then could have been more controversial to the black community, as opposed to like even like like whenever you think of any stories with like Muhammad Ali, like what he did back in the day, that was all controversial, him not trying to fight in Vietnam, but like now everybody's like, oh, he was strong, it was amazing that he did that, so I just think it's interesting to see like to see that side of some of these people's lives and what they had to deal with, and just based on their perspective and what the type of art they wanted to put out, and how political or maybe less political they wanted to be, or just how they wanted to live their lives. And it's good to see this variety and this spectrum of different biopics that are being made, and I'm starting to think, really, like I said, limited series sometimes is a better medium than a maybe just a feature film, because you just, like I said, unless it's going to be a really long movie. So I think this could be pretty good. I mean, like I said, Lee Daniels, he's a good filmmaker. And I'm definitely going to check it out.
Indeed. And I guess what I'll say on the matter is that Kelly here, he's no stranger to the skill set that will be needed to maximize doing this role. He's an alumni of many prior projects that Daniels has done. I know you were just commenting on The Butler. He he collaborated with Daniels on The Butler and with Fox's Star. And additionally, as I said, with that scene component, he was in, as is stated here in the article, The Wiz Live, as well as New Line's Hairspray. So, doing shows that or projects that incorporate a musical component, you're going to need that skill set for this role. And so, it'll be interesting to see, what how it all comes together. But as you said, in terms of telling certain stories, I feel like it's very advantageous to do a mini series, because oftentimes when we're talking about a lot of series where we're covering, a real life person or a real life event, sometimes there's a situations where the subject matter or the story requires long form storytelling, but there's a fine balance between doing a multi-season series versus doing just as you said an extended movie. So I'm definitely interested, as I said, in seeing what they have. And did you have any other additional thoughts before we move on to our next story?
No, I mean that's pretty much it. But I will say, like, yeah, I mean, I think it, like I said, really just depends on how in depth the story is of that person's life, and what are the themes you want to actually portray, or just we intertwine throughout the project. Because there's I mean, just because someone has done has been through a lot of different situations, or there's been so many like memorable situations that happened in that person's life, like that doesn't mean you have to show everything. But it is kind of nice though, like to show stuff, I feel like, that maybe like not everyone would know unless you're like a Sammy Davis Jr. fan, or like I'll give you an example, like and I will say the difference. This shows the difference of what you could do in like a limited series. Like I like the movie Selena, Jennifer Lopez. I thought she did a good job, but there's only so much they could do in that movie. But if you watch the Selena the series, the miniseries, I mean, they put the little detail with Beyonce, young Beyonce passing Selena by and telling her mom, like, that's Selena, that's a singer, and like the mom, she didn't really know who Selena was, but it just showed, like, come on, I mean, if Selena was big in Texas, of course a young Beyonce who's from Houston is going to admire her if she's trying to be a singer. So little things like that, and that actually did happen. Maybe it didn't exactly happen that way, but it's kind of fun seeing that those little details. And you can do that in a limited series. You can't really do it in a feature film as much, because it's just like you just don't have the time. I mean, I've heard that in the movie Straight Outta Compton, like Ice Cube was talking about this. He was just like, yeah, man, like some people were trying to make criticisms like, man, you didn't show what is it, there's some group, I forgot what they were called at first, that like Dr. Dre was like producing, and he was like, man, the movie would have been like 3 hours or 4 hours. And I'm like, I don't blame him, but it's like you have to pick and choose. But you can put more in a limited series, so that's going to be interesting to see. But yeah, looking forward to watching it though.
For sure. All right, so hopping into our next story. We did receive news this week, and it's actually via Instagram. I know we always say via Deadline or some of the other outlets out there, but this was via social media, via Instagram. Received the news that Brie Larson, yes, Captain Marvel of the MCU, will be joining Fast 10. And let me pull up the actual post. This was from Vin Diesel's Instagram. Let me see if I can pull it up here. Yay, technology. All right, there you go. So yeah, in the post from Vin Diesel, he was quoted as saying, yeah, you see this angel over my shoulder cracking me up. You say to yourself, that's Captain Marvel. Clearly there's love and laughter in this image. What you don't see, however, is the character you will be introduced to in Fast 10. You have no idea how timeless and amazing she will be in our mythology. Beyond her beauty, her intellect, her Oscar, this is this profound soul who will add something you may not have. And let me see if I can scroll down here. you may not have expected but yearned for. So, Jerome, we already have a pretty star-studded cast. We already have what Jason Momoa, Charlize Theron, from what I understand, will be back because
Mm-hmm.
Momoa had previously, spoiled that, in a conversation that he recently had, that she will be back. So, what are your thoughts on Captain Marvel joining the family?
Um, yeah, I mean, if these are really the last two Fast films, I mean, you got to go out with a bang. I mean, it's an ensemble already. I mean, and these sequels, they keep, they, I don't know. I just felt like like I said, I didn't think originally this franchise would get to number 10, and or you can say 10A, and then the 10B would be 11 or whatever if they're part of the same final story. But yeah, I mean, that's what these movies are about. I mean, you have an ensemble that's mixed and has different perspectives, different ethnicities, different characters. That's what makes it interesting. Obviously, you have the action, cars, and the new situations, and then also how they add other high profile actors into some of these roles, from the bad guys to. I mean, I have no idea what she's gonna do. I mean, maybe she might be, who knows? She could be related to Charlize Theron's character, or she could be, another friend of Vin Diesel. I mean, of Dom Toretto. I mean, who knows? And then we got Jason Momoa. I'm assuming he's probably going to be. I mean, he might be like, I don't know, either law enforcement after them, or maybe he's part of, Cypher's crew or something. Who knows? But yeah, I mean, I think it's always fun when they have, fresh blood in there, or fresh cast members. And also, I guess Vin Diesel he probably, has to compensate a little bit, because I know he wanted The Rock to come back, but I mean, to me, any of these additional members, like in the end, it doesn't really matter as much to me personally. I just hope the movie is just better than some of the other sequels. That's all I really care about. Just make a good movie, and don't make it too ridiculous. Even though we're kind of past the ridiculous thermometer in this franchise, but if it's gonna be ridiculous, at least really, really make it I don't know, just entertaining and interesting, and not make it make sense, and make it tie up some of these loose ends, because that's what this franchise has been notorious for. It's like, oh, we start killing people off, and they're like, oh no, you're not really dead then because this happened, blah blah blah. All right, okay. So all I care about is, are these last two going to be actually pretty good, and are these going to be the last two? Remains to be seen. I'm not sure if I'm completely convinced that these are going to be the last two, even for the main franchise. But I'm sure they will for the spinoff. They'll probably have more spinoffs too, but we'll see if these are the last two. That's what they say. But I don't know what you think.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I guess on my end, it'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see, as you said, because at this point they haven't really talked about who she's going to be playing. So I guess on my end, my curiosity is who exactly she is playing, because I believe at this point has been, and I'll look at it again, or if you want to, confirm. I believe they've already revealed that Jason Momoa will be the villain. I'm assuming he might be the villain this go around, to kind of up the ante, if you will, for this next installment. So that kind of begs the question of who our Brie Larson is going to be playing, because there are a couple of things that could be happening, and now I'll put this up. And I know Jerome always laughs when I put this up, but I'm trying to be respectful of of story points of a prior installment if you haven't seen it. And right now, the status of Mr. Nobody is a mystery. Like, we don't know what has happened, or what has become of him, based on the events of the last installment of 9. They kind of left it up in the air. So, is she stepping in as like the new face of Mr. Nobody? Maybe she's Mrs. Nobody. Maybe she's related to Kurt Russell's character, and she's stepping in as that liaison with this shadow organization that Russell was a part of. We don't know. Or like you said, maybe she's related to Charlize Theron's character Cypher somehow. But I feel, I'll be honest with you, the way that Vin is discussing it, it makes me picture that she may end up being an ally more so than a villain, because it would be an interesting dynamic if you have, Charlize and Momoa going up against, Vin and Brie. So that would be an interesting, dynamic of a duo of two duos going against each other. So, maybe I could be right, could be wrong. I have no way of proving this, but I have, my theory is that she is a part of that shadow organization that Russell has led the last couple of installments, and has acted as a an ally of Toretto and the rest of the team. So, any final thoughts before we move on?
Yeah, I mean that could be, and and it really, in the end, it doesn't even matter if someone's a bad guy or not, because then all of a sudden they become a good guy.
Exactly. At the end of
And
the
then
day,
you're
it
like,
really don't matter.
wait a second, you killed my brother, I killed your guy, and then now we're gonna team up. I mean, I'm just saying, like, I just hope they make it make better sense. And I don't know, they might go to Mars this time. I don't know, Elon Musk might have a cameo. You never know. I mean, who knows? They might be on Mars driving cars. I don't know, man. I'm just like, if you're gonna, you don't have to completely up the ante with everything, even though that's what they do for the most part. It's like, just make it like, make sense. That's all I can say. And also, the question is, who's going to be the next rapper that makes a cameo? Every movie they have like a different rapper. Pretty much every movie. What are they going to bring? Ja Rule back? That's what I want to know, man. What happened to Ja Rule?
Yeah. No, I hear you. Indeed. No, that would be cool. That would be cool to, bring things full circle by bringing back, a lot of the OG characters from the franchise thus far. So, it would definitely be cool to check that out and to see that. So, all right. So moving on to our next story, and pull it up here. Give me one moment. We did receive a cool featurette that was titled as Legacy, from Universal Pictures for the upcoming installment in the Jurassic Park franchise, now at this point known as Jurassic World. The upcoming installment is known as Jurassic World Dominion. And in this new Legacy featurette, if you guys are not aware, it's already been spoiled in the trailer. So, I'm not going to put up the disclaimer, but they go in depth with the OG characters from the original trilogy. So if you give me 1 second, I will pull that up now, so that way we can discuss and talk about it. All right, Andrew, let me get you here. Bring us over here. All right, so I'm going to play it here. Give us 1 second, guys, just so we can talk about, some of these moments that they introduce us to.
We had an enormous amount of fun on the first film.
Cut, good, excellent.
There was an energy on set that it was the first time you'd ever seen anything like this.
So I'm gonna pause that right there. So a little fun, fact about me, about my childhood, is that at one point in my life, I thought that I was going to be a paleontologist. I knew just about every, type of fact about dinosaurs. And I feel like a lot of kids go through that dinosaur phase, but I was in it pretty deep, doing different programs in terms of, what it takes to be a paleontologist and digging up bones and all that type of stuff. So it's really, surreal to have a lot of these characters, that I grew up watching, now joining forces with, you know, the current era characters that we have with this new trilogy. So, you know, seeing all of this old footage, you know, I remember where I was when I saw the movie the first time. I don't know, Jerome, if you were really hard pressed in the dinosaurs growing up, but
I wasn't that pressed to watch the movie. But then my big brother,
go ahead.
No, but then my big brother, not real big brother, but like he was like, you gotta watch it. And I was like, it was funny. That was the first time I like had a popcorn dinner and I like threw up because I ate like all this popcorn. But I was like, no, the movie, I enjoyed the movie. And no, of course I enjoyed the first one, but I just wasn't as like, oh, I have to see this. So, but I did I don't know what it was. These kids, like, you guys love dinosaurs so much to the point where it's like, it's crazy.
No, I was obsessed. Like, and I remember seeing the movie like 5 or 6 times when it came out in theaters. I remember.
Oh wow, I didn't see that many times.
I remember where I was. I was at you guys. I'm gonna age myself a little bit, but everyone here in the DC area knows what I'm talking about. Is Union Station used to have a movie theater.
I think I saw it there too.
That used to be a spot where I would go and check out any like big major blockbuster movies growing up as a kid. So so shout out to Union Station, and you know that being you know, my childhood theater, so to speak. But yeah, like I remember checking it out there. I remember just like they talk, and they go into it here in this video, but like all of those moments, whether it was, you know, that initial first scene that we have, you know, with the raptor and them trying to, you know, create that cage for the raptor and how it kind of goes sideways, that opening that they have, whether it's just the introduction of our characters with, you know, Sam Neill's character with Dr. Brandt, and you know, that scene a lot of people will laugh, that scene that he has with that like smart ass kid that you know talks about how, like, you know, what is it, raptors aren't,
and he's like, he'll rip you with this, and then he runs.
Like I remember that scene. You know, them first going. The introduction of Hammond and him, you know, recruiting them to check out this park, and some of the other characters too, of course, with Ian Malcolm, of course, who is making a return here, and then a lot of those other moments with the water, you know, shaking, you know, with the T-Rex coming, or the raptor opening up the door when he was going after the kids, you know, all of those like major moments. And of course there've been much more in the second and third one, but that specifically, that first one. So I'll fast forward a little bit of what they have with, well, I'll fast forward it to some of the moments that we have in the upcoming franchise here, because there's a couple of things that I did want to talk about. So if you guys haven't seen the last one, and I guess it would require this.
Well, if you've seen the trailer, the dinosaurs.
Well, I'm saying the last installment. They ended up releasing the dinosaurs out into the wild, and so now we have that in-game, you know, situation that was introduced in the first, you know, Jurassic Park. What if they were out in the wild, and you know, we actually have humans in their everyday, you know, in their everyday lives interacting with dinosaurs, not in the park, but coexisting, you know, with dinosaurs. So, all right.
Is the culmination of the franchise. It concludes a story that Steven Spielberg started telling in 1993.
And just talking about like, just like the animatronics and like all the state-of-the-art things that, you know, that they introduced at that time too. I didn't even mention that.
Sam Neill and Jeff Goldblum and Laura Dern. It's pretty fantastic.
It is so much fun. It is everything we could have ever hoped for and more.
So of course, as I said, we have the introduction of other characters, but one thing that I'll fast forward to that they do give us here is, let me see if I can get it there, is they have an introduction at the end. And just as you saw in the trailer, you know, we have this moment where both of two of our characters are, you know, saying, you know, that famous line of "Don't move," of, you know, that idea of movement being a means of sight for, you know, the larger predators.
Don't move.
So we have an introduction of another, you know, dinosaur there. And I want to say,
really? Okay.
Yeah. So
it looks like a T-Rex to me, or maybe it's a
I know, and I'll get into that. So right here. So it's the same scene there, and you have a scene of a new dinosaur, and dinosaur I believe it's called Giganto. Let me see, Gigantosaurus. I want to say, I believe that's the name, but yeah, Gigantosaurus. So recently, in speaking of, paleontology, it was discovered that there are, a lot of people just assumed for the longest time that T-Rex was the largest, predator out there as a dinosaur that, that was a predator out there. And lo and behold, not too long ago, in discovering, some other fossils, that there was another predator out there that was actually bigger than the T-Rex was. So they're actually going to introduce, that dinosaur in this upcoming film. And it's always funny because, like, I'm like, okay, so how are you going to, top yourself in this upcoming installment? And it seems like in every single film we've had a new dinosaur to supersede the T-Rex, because the T-Rex has for so long been like the big overarching like force in the last couple installments. And so, in the first one we had one T-Rex, and the second one we had two of them. If you remember, Jerome, we had the two like parent T-Rexes, and then because we had the introduction of that baby T-Rex, and then in the third one they gave us a new dinosaur. As a matter of fact, they tried to really like hype up.
I don't think I saw the third one.
Okay,
I think I still need to watch the third one. I don't think I saw the first two and then the last two, but yeah, I'm gonna have to watch the third one.
I'm saying, so they had another dinosaur to fight the T-Rex, to hype up how dangerous it was. It actually fought the T-Rex and killed the T-Rex in the third film, the Spinosaurus. And then once we had the first Jurassic World, then that's when we had the hybrid, Indominus Rex. And then in the last one, we had that Indoraptor. So we had a smaller version of the raptor. So now we're going to have this Gigantosaurus in this film. So it'll be interesting to see how they're going to, quote unquote, top themselves. I feel like at some point, like, it kind of gets a little mundane of just, doing, oh, we have a bigger dinosaur. Oh, we have another bigger dinosaur than that. Oh, we have another bigger dinosaur than this. So hopefully there's something else. Hopefully there's something else that it brings to the table in terms of making it a threat other than
just play it out. Yes, you got to switch it up. I'm saying,
other than it's just bigger. Because I remember for a long time,
just pick a different version of the species. That's what
I guess what I'm saying is
there's different ones.
I don't know if you remembered this this info going around, or the concept art, or the rumor going around, is that for a long time they were talking about, with upcoming Jurassic Park installments, of playing with the idea of hybridization, not with dinosaurs, but
with other animals.
Well, no, hybridization with
humans.
People. So like they were going to play with the idea of doing a hybrid of like a human being and a dinosaur. So like
I guess so.
That would have been interesting. Like, I don't know, that would have been far more interesting than if they had gone down, I guess you could say, gone down that rabbit hole, versus, just doing a bigger dinosaur every installment. But again, like I said, I haven't.
Well, I guess to make them soldiers for their war, to fight war. Exactly. That's what they're not. Yeah, maybe. Exactly. But how smart would they be too? That's the interesting. Yeah, if they can make
that's it. And then how much, if we're talking,
then it turns into I Am Legend, and they just kill everybody. Then it'll just be like one person left.
But I'm saying, like, it provides, different things to play with in terms of character, I feel like, versus just having like, just a larger dinosaur every.
No, I think that's played out. Yes, I agree. Yeah. It's played out. It is played out. That's
by incorporating. But I'm saying, by incorporating the human element of going down that rabbit hole, they could have played.
I don't know. I think it would be more realistic to do a hybridization with like other dangerous animals, because then you can then they could adapt to stuff. They could do stuff that they couldn't do as just dinosaurs. Because there's like certain insects that are stronger than a whole bunch of people. They're just tinier. You know what I'm saying? Like you could do all sorts.
I get that. So I guess what I'm saying is they hybridized the Indominus Rex, and they borrowed they borrowed features from other animals. So I get what you're saying, because that's why I was able to camouflage. That's why I was able to expand its jaw like really far, is because I think it was because of some DNA that it shared with the snake that they incorporated into its like DNA. So I mean, we had components of that. I'm saying in terms of the human element, kind of like what happens in what's the film in Planet of the Apes, like the recent trilogy that we had Matt Reeves did the last 2 installments of. Matt Reeves, if you don't know, directed recently the Batman. For those of you out there, so just that idea of playing with the idea of how much of these creatures are, you know, primitive as a dinosaur with their DNA, and how much of them are human, and if they, especially if it's a character that was to start a human being and they're transformed into this hybrid, do they keep, you know, some of those memories of, you know, being a human being, or, you know, do they become completely, you know, inhuman? And, you know, there's so many different components that you could play with that if they decided to go down that rabbit hole. They might still do that.
I feel like that's a separate I feel like that's more of like a horror franchise. That becomes like a horror sci-fi. Like, these are PG-13 movies, bro.
But it's interesting though. Sometimes, you know,
no, I know, but I feel like but I feel like that's a different, that would have to be like, that could be like a spin-off, but I feel like it would be more, that would work more, I think, if it's like a, yeah, kind of like a, you know, a horror I Am Legend type of situation or something like that, because then it's like,
no, I think it could still work as a PG-13 film, because, like, as I said, you can play with it the same way that you played with the what is it, the Planet of the Apes franchise, because, you know, they had qualities that,
or like that, or be, yeah, I guess like that maybe, but then it's just copying Planet of the Apes and putting dinosaurs.
But I feel like sometimes going bigger isn't always the answer. Sometimes you can still have it smaller and more in a more self-contained story, but just, you know, tilt the idea
go more interesting.
Yeah,
unique.
The idea on its head. So we'll see.
And that dinosaur was called Ulugbegosaurus uzbekistanensis. That's what I looked online. That's the one you were talking about. The apex predator. Ulugbeg. So, hey man.
So
it's too hard to pronounce. That's why they probably just be like new apex predator. But anyway, yeah, maybe that could be something. I don't know. I feel like it's more of a horror film, the hybrid thing. But, you know, whatever.
Agree to disagree.
We'll see. I just don't see, like, I don't know. I just feel like it's not as, they have to really add something to it to make it, like, not played out, like, because that's my only issue with this franchise. I'm glad that they're adding this element of them. You know, it's a little bit different now, and they're kind of tying it in, like you were saying, with the other franchise. But yeah, I hope they take a break after this, because I'm just like, what else are you gonna do with dinosaurs, man? Are they gonna be on? Weren't they trying to make Fast and Furious? They're gonna have cars and dinosaurs on Mars next, and they're gonna be like, all right, y'all need to do something different, man. But I blame the audience for watching. Keep watching it.
Hence my point. So
dinosaurs in fast cars on Mars. That's what we're gonna get. Anyway.
Oh boy.
All right,
anyway, moving on to our last story. So over the course of this week, news dropped that there is an overhaul happening from Warner Brothers Discovery for its overhaul, I should say, of DC Entertainment. And DC Entertainment, if you're not aware, includes many of the superhero characters that we know and love, you know, whether it's Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, The Flash, Green Arrow. I can go on and on and on. But the new owners, in a story in Variety, the new owners of these characters, excuse me, I'm sorry. So yeah, the new owners of these characters are currently in the process of trying to overhaul these characters, and in a similar setup, or I guess you can say a structuring that you see over at Disney with their Marvel characters, is that they're trying to organize them under one umbrella. And in that same setup, They're trying to have a Kevin Feige, if you will, oversee, all of that content. So currently, right now, David Zaslav is the current CEO of the combined companies, and as I said, the combined company is known now as Warner Brothers Discovery. Jerome, what are your thoughts now that we have the official formation of Warner Brothers Discovery now official, that they are setting their sights on a DC Entertainment and trying to restructure it in a more cohesive way?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea to separate that entity and try to have somebody in charge of just that world and those properties. So there's more cohesion and there's more of a plan and it's focused, and there's also someone who's like who's going to maximize all of the properties there, and also who's passionate about it. I mean, I know they were saying in the article someone who's with a lot of business experience doing stuff like that, with properties. But like I disagree with the idea of like just the business sensibility, because that's been the problem with DC originally. Like they were doing it, they were building that whole world of this shared universe from a business perspective, playing catch up, because it was executives making those decisions, and finally they're kind of finding their own way, but it's still not completely consistent. Even though Warner Brothers, they can make really good DC movies. I mean, you look at the Christopher Nolan Batman films. I mean, the recent Batman was really good. And, they have good movies. It's just, for their shared universe, and now they're trying to do these prequels or these solo films. And then they have the TV, the HBO Max spinoffs. And it's like, okay, if you're going to do all this stuff, you got like, where is it going? And also just organizing and being clear with the message of, all right, these films are in this universe. This film is separate. Like, it's not really clear. Like, to the average person or something, I'm sure the average person is probably like, what the hell's going on? I mean, we know more about the nuances, but I'm sure there's some confusion also. So it would be good to have it maybe, under just one umbrella, and have that person in charge of all those decisions, and trying to make it more cohesive, as opposed to just the execs at Warner Brothers or execs there just saying, okay, yes, we need to just compete with Marvel. Let's try to do this. And, it's maybe not working now. Let's just pivot and do something else. It's like, you can pivot, but like, it doesn't mean you necessarily have to completely go outside of what you were originally trying to do, or build it. And also we got to remember, I'm not saying that they can't do it. Like, I think they could get somebody, but we also got to remember, like, the main reason why it's different at Marvel is because Marvel was doing this on their own originally, because they cared about, creating their own films. They got the financing independently. When I'm talking about Marvel Studios, I'm not talking about all the licensed properties to different studios. Like Spider-Man was at Sony and X-Men at Fox before. But, with Iron Man, the whole idea is they were doing that by themselves. So they cared about what they were doing, and they were setting that standard and building that universe. And then eventually, because of the success, that's when Disney bought them. So they were like, this machine is working, keep going. DC, it was the total opposite. They were just like, pretty much they're like, let's keep making Batman films. Milk it. And then now we're done. All right, what's next to do? Look what Marvel's doing. Okay, that's really successful. Let's just try to do the same thing. But it wasn't like, it was just a bunch of properties under Warner Brothers, and they're just trying to copy, as opposed to like, all right, what are we really trying to do here? Are we trying to focus and make our own world? All right, how do we build it? It's more of like, oh, this is a trend, let's just copy like that. And you could see with the films. Now I feel like they're, they've seen some of the missteps and they were trying to correct them. And there have been some films that were pretty good. And I feel like they're still going in that direction, but they're kind of trying to be careful with what with some of their A-list or their A-list characters that they're really big characters, like like Superman and Batman, who's going to continue in that world. And I guess in that shared universe world. And I feel like because they're still deciding, who's going to be the Superman or Batman now that's continuing that world. Let's just try and make some of those films separately and that aren't. And those films can still be good, like, I mean, or do well, like, you know, or like Joker, or now you have the Batman and they're doing these other projects. But I just think still the issue is, you know, the closest fix that they had of trying to connect all these or just communicate it was with the TV series. Remember, with the whole multiverse. So that became an element. But still, regardless of that easy fix or explanation of trying to like connect stuff, even though you don't need to connect everything, I think what they probably need is like they need to really make it clear that like if they're gonna make films like the Joker and keep making like villain films like that should have a certain branding. Be like, this is Marvel, whatever. I mean, I'm not saying Marvel, DC, like, you know, Origins or something like that. And then maybe it's like DCEU is like everything else, you know, Shazam and Black Adam, you know, Justice League, all of that, Suicide Squad, and like, you know, it's that. And then maybe, you know, what is the other one? Well, I guess the Batman, I mean, that's its own world too. I don't know. Maybe that could be like, I just feel like if they sort of branded separately and people know, okay, this is where this is going. But I feel like there's going to be some confusion because you look at the new Batgirl, you know, we already know, like with the Batgirl movie coming out, it's still in that it has to be in the DCEU universe, because if J.K. Simmons is going to be is playing Commissioner Gordon, and you have and then have Michael Keaton there as Batman, I mean, it's not Jeffrey Wright from the Batman, so that's obviously a different. So I just feel like they're still good. You know, they're having success, and they know that they have some successful films, and they can still do it. You know, make improvements. But I feel like the branding isn't as clear with some of these films and these shows, and I feel like they need to try and figure that out. So it's just more, the messaging is clear, and people know what they're watching. You know, because you're gonna confuse. I think they're gonna confuse some audiences, and maybe not maximize everything. Like when you see Marvel film, like you see Marvel Studios, you know what you're watching. You know the universe you're in. Even if you see like Morbius or whatever, you might see the Marvel sign, but you know it's not Marvel Studios. So I mean, there is a difference. People clearly have seen the difference in quality, like as opposed to like the Marvel Studios films and like a Morbius or Venom, or, you know, now you have two other Sony ones coming out, Kraven and Madam Web. So I feel like that has to be. They need to do that on the DC side, and I feel like they can do it, but they just need to like really have someone who is like consistent. That's all they're focusing on. So I hope they can do that, and maybe this is a step in the right direction. So, I mean, like to see what you want to know what you think about it.
Yeah, no. So I'll break down a couple of pieces of this, and you know, I will say this. You know, when we're talking about superhero films makes me picture, you know, different eras. I know a lot of people say, oh, this is the way a superhero movie needs to be made, or this is the way, you know, a franchise needs to be, you know, tackled. And let's all be honest with each other and just know that just as you would have with comics, you know, you have different eras with, you know, your artists, with your writers. You have the same thing that happens with movies too. I mean, I've mentioned on it here many times of, you know, Batman being the first movie I saw. The 89 Batman is a completely different beast than, you know, what we have with our superhero films now. But that was the era that we had with our superhero films. You know, we had, you know, a very, with those films, you know, gothic, you know, dark, but they worked, and they were, you know, awesome. And the characters that we had, you know, they were interesting and dynamic. So, you know, you had that era of Batman movies in, you know, the 80s. I mean, we also had, you know, the Christopher Reeve Superman. We had those films, and then, you know, as time went by, as we were getting closer to the millennium, you know, we started getting, you know, some superhero films that were really over the top, like the Schumacher Batman movies. And I know people aren't like huge fans of those, and I understand that, but at the same time, I understand the thought of what was trying to be done there. You know, if we're looking back at like the 60s, you know, Batman show, those Schumacher films in terms of tone are more like the 60s Batman, TV series, and people that like the TV series. If you look back at the TV series, that 60s TV series,
goofier.
It's way goofier. It's way goofier. So, it may not be your cup of tea, but at the same time, again, we're going back to eras and aesthetics of what you're doing with your characters. And then, as I said, as you're getting into the millennium, that's when we were starting to get, a more grounded approach to a lot of these superhero characters. And people were in a state of mind at that time to accept that new style and aesthetic. So, I mean, we started to get Blade, towards that was 98. We started to get, the first X-Men, that was 2000. Then after that, we got, Spider-Man, Raimi's Spider-Man, the first Spider-Man. And then, that's when, as we were going into, the new millennium, we were starting to get an expansion of that era of films, because a lot of them were getting multiple sequels. And eventually we got to the point where we had Marvel, as you said, that they came with the new playbook. Their playbook was actually, instead of just doing the standard formula that we see in the film, in the film side, in the film industry, of just doing another sequel and another sequel.
Or individual stories,
individual stories. Now they came up with the idea, what? Why don't we make these like comic books and actually have like an overarching story that, we have an entire universe to play with, and we have intersecting stories. Again, this is not necessarily, talking about right or wrong, or this is better, or like this is the way you should do it. It's just, now we're in a time of age where people want to have, intersecting stories. I mean, it's just the nature of the beast of, if you're in any industry business, of understanding how those trends change, of, your consumer base and them, changing in terms of their demand for certain type of content or product. So thinking of the reason why I bring that up is because, I know a lot of people kind of give Warner Brothers a lot of flack of what they're doing now. And don't get me wrong, like currently that, that's what it seems, that's how it appears, where it's just, you're just throwing things against the wall because they're kind of like, shuffling or really trying to rush to try to figure things out. That I would say that's more so, what it is. But I mean, there was a time when Warner Brothers was killing it. Like, they were the only person there on the block, and they were the only ones really doing, entertaining superhero films for a while. Before before New Line came into play with Blade, before 20th Century came in with X-Men, before Sony came in with Spider-Man. And now, now that we have Marvel. And I will also say, with Marvel, they had that playbook going, but to the point of what they're saying in this article, when they were doing Marvel Studios, a lot of that was specifically what they were doing with their movie properties at a time. Like, what is it? Kevin Feige, he was still answering to, and I'm brain farting on his name right now, but
Avi Arad?
No, not Avi. Was it Perlman? Is that his name? I believe, who oversaw the TV umbrella of Marvel. So like with the Netflix shows that we got.
No, that's I know you're talking about. That's it's like Jeb, isn't it Jeb something?
Jeb Lowe. I want to say.
I think it's Jeb. Yeah, hold on.
You can tell me.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. Keep going.
But yeah. Let me know. But I want to say it's Jeff Loeb.
Yeah. Hold on. Let me get the.
But anyway, I digress. Going into just that whole idea of having that umbrella. Kevin Feige, he demonstrated a successful track record with what he was doing with the film umbrella, and because of that, eventually Disney gave him the keys to the other pieces of Marvel, because at one time he only oversaw movies. He didn't oversee like television. He wasn't overseeing comics, and now he's the chief creative officer of Marvel. So he oversees everything Marvel across various platforms. So with that in mind, it'll be interesting to see who they can have that's comparable that can do the same with DC, because DC for a while, for quite some time, even as they were struggling with these live adaptations and getting it going, they were killing it with the animated movies that they were doing. So it's just a matter of just that whole idea of cohesion, and it doesn't necessarily. I know a lot of people get into the idea it has to be a shared universe. It doesn't even have to be a shared universe. Honestly, I was just saying, just have a focused goal in mind of what you're trying to do, even if you're not specifically trying to do a shared universe. And I think I saw a comment in one of the articles that kind of just like exemplifies, what I'm talking about, of that cohesion piece. In that article in Variety, it was mentioned in the article that there's a belief with Warner Brothers Discovery that projects like Todd Phillips' Joker are a shining example, and this is in the article, a shining example of how second build characters from the DC library can be exploited. And they said Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn is another example. Guys, like, I feel like this exemplifies it. Joker is not a secondary character, so like the fact that was like highlighted, as a character that's secondary, like I feel.
Well, I think they mean because he's not like, because he's a villain, but yeah, he's an A-list villain, but he's not like
villain. He's not.
I know,
like
but I think what they probably, I know it sounds, I think they probably mean because it's not like a hero, like I think that's probably what they're talking about.
So maybe it was just worded weirdly, but I'm like, okay, this highlights, what just re-examining, all the cool characters that you have, and
but to be fair though, Joker never had a movie. That was the first time they gave a movie just to Joker. That's what I'm saying. So they've all those movies were starring Batman. Joker was in it. That's what they mean. That's what I think they mean. Because
okay, but I get that a character doesn't get.
But that's impressive. But that's impressive that they made a movie about Joker and it did well. And so I mean, I knew it would probably.
I get that.
But that's what they mean by secondary
characters that don't have a movie, but they are still A-list characters. We didn't get one.
But in the movies, though, it's secondary in the movies. That's what I think they mean. Like in comics, maybe not, but in the films, there never was a Joker film until that Joker film. So I think that's proving that they can make those characters that are secondary in the films their own movies and then be successful. I think that's what they mean by that. Because you got to look at it. There's the movie world and the comics world. Even if it's A-list in the comics world, doesn't mean it's A-list yet. Like by itself, meaning that not. But here's the thing. I understand what you're saying, but still, at the end of the day, it's an A-list character. The only reason why I bring that up and I argue that, but it's still secondary.
The reason why I argue that is because if we look at those installments that we have Joker in, people are not seeing those movies because of Batman. They are seeing it because of the Joker. The first
I wouldn't say that's arguable.
First Batman movie,
that's arguable.
The Dark Knight. They were not seeing it because of Batman.
But it's. I wouldn't say that's completely accurate. I mean, it's both. I think it's both
because of. I know there were other extenuating circumstances of the unfortunate passing of Heath Ledger, but outside of that,
if that was true, then they wouldn't watch any of the other Batman films.
Outside of that, you still. But
they still watch the other movies though. So
you still the ones still did well. That much money. I agree to disagree. You still wouldn't have made as much money. But they weren't.
Yeah, but they still were watching those Batman films even without Joker in it. So that one made more because he's a more popular character. But
Thank you.
But I don't think the first Batman film made more than all the other sequels either, and that had Joker. So I'm just saying.
Let me ask you this: are we going to get $1 billion? Movie of Mr. Freeze?
I don't know about that. I mean,
are we going to get $1 billion? And I love
you never know. You could eventually.
I love these characters, by the way.
You could eventually.
Hold on. Are we going to get $1 billion movie of Clayface?
Of which one?
Clayface.
I don't know. You could. You can't, dude. There's movies that made millions of dollars that I'm like, how, like, hey, I don't think Iron Man would have been $1 billion franchise either until it did well. I'm just saying Iron Man wasn't A-list. He was C-list. And then he became A-list. I'm just saying it's possible.
I wouldn't compare.
No, but it's possible.
Joker. The only reason I say that is because if we say Joker in any casual, group conversation, people know who you're talking about. You know, even if we're talking about, even if we're talking about maybe like 10, 20 years ago, before we had like the rise of MCU, if you brought up the topic of the Joker, people immediately know what you're talking about, even if they know nothing about comic books. So that's the point that I'm trying to make of, you know,
I don't think that's cool. I mean, for a villain, people know, but I think if that was the case, you would have had just a whole bunch of Joker films, and you don't. You have two solo Batman films with the Joker in it, and yes, and they finally have a solo Joker.
Eras of filmmaking. It's not because
but those other ones still did well though without the Joker. So like that doesn't make it. If that was the case, then they wouldn't make. You know, that's. I disagree that it's just the Joker.
If they made a film of Jack Nicholson's Joker and they just did a solo film, that would have made money. So
yeah, I mean, probably. Yeah, I mean, maybe, but I mean,
mad money. So
I don't think that they're just seeing it for the Joker, though. I don't think they're just seeing it for the Joker, though. I mean, that's, you know. But anyway,
we can agree to disagree. But with that being said, as you know, guys, we get super passionate.
But anyway, last thing I would say, I disagree with you. And I mean, I know you're trying to break down. Oh, there's different era. You got to remember, all those films that were made before Marvel made their movies. It wasn't Marvel making the movies. It was other studios interpreting those films. And the same with DC. They're making it's studios saying we're gonna make this type of film. I still think it makes more. You can't tell me that the people who made the comics, their own material, if they're involved making their adaptation, it has to do with that perspective saying, hey, this is how we want to make it. This is how it should be made because they created the source material. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not saying you can't make different versions, but I would still say that I put more faith in the authenticity of what the actual film should be. Or should be interpreted as, because you're having people who actually created the source material doing that. So I wouldn't say that the audience. I'm sure the audience would have been ready for this stuff. I think it has to do with they finally got, like I said, Marvel Studios and the people who created Marvel Comics will have that passion and understand that world. Finally got the power and the rights to actually make those films. That's why it took so long. Not about like, oh, we're just ready. Because the same with DC or whatever. Like, you know, it depends on who. They just don't have that, but they're just having the studios are having faith in, oh, we want this style of filmmaker to do it, you know, and they're switching stuff up. But I mean, I think there is something to be said about somebody who's actually created the source material and now they're finally getting a chance to make those projects. You're going to see a difference, and that's a key difference. And I mean, let's be real. You look at comic books. Of course, there's solo comic books, but the whole point of comic books that's great is that they are interconnected, and like that's a key part. And everyone else missed that because in these films because they weren't making those films. They just wanted to focus on solo characters. I get it. It's hard to do that. But I think it has to do with you have limited properties, and it's like we're just focusing on this because we want to focus on this character because that's the money. But I mean, I bet you if you gave like DC, if they were in charge of all this, they probably would have done something similar too. I'm sure they would have, because like why not? You know, so
I'll say this, and I'll close. I agree to disagree, and the only reason being is that, you know, when we're talking about all of those films in which, you know, we didn't have a shared universe, we would not even have the MCU. And, you know, it's been mentioned, you know, by Kevin Feige. And don't get me wrong, like I love interconnected. I love what has been done, you know, with the current era. So it's not that. It's not that I don't like it, but I will make the point that, you know, we would not have had, you know, those.
I mean, that's money. That's those money.
Without, those without what came before and being inspired by what came before. And I mean, even Feige himself has, you know, been on record saying and we have to also remember too, you know, he worked on a lot of those, you know, prior films. He worked on, you know, the Singer X-Men, you know, movies, and was brought in to consult. He was brought in and consult for a lot of those films. So, you know, his involvement and his synergy, if you will, is a part of those earlier films too. And, you know, we also have to understand too that, you know, because I know you were just talking about it now of, you know, being in the know, if you will, and, you know, kind of taking for granted how much, you know, we are like deeply entrenched in like the news cycle, and how, you know, some folks are not deeply entrenched, is just that idea that, if you are doing a shared universe, at some point, and I know it seems kind of alien to think about this, but some people like, their individual stories because they like the fact that, if I haven't been keeping track of something for a while, that I can still step into the story and still understand what's going on. Versus,
but you can do that. You can do that with it. But you can do that with a lot of that's why they're so great. Like they have that extra bonus, but like you can still understand. Every story is like you can just watch each film and you're like, all right, I get it. Now you might not get some certain things, but that's not as important. It's just extra. They operate that well. Yeah. That's why if they didn't, no, you're right. If they didn't, then that would be an issue. Like the best sequels, you don't have to see the one before. Like you can watch. That's what James Cameron said. He's like he made sure Terminator 2. You didn't have to see the one before because they go into what happened. I mean, yeah, if you see it, you'd be like, oh, this is better.
So case in point,
it's extra. It's like added benefit.
But I'm saying case in point, and don't get me wrong, I love Endgame and I love Infinity War, and I think that they're, terrific, films. I had relatives, and they're casual, movie going, fans, and, maybe they've seen maybe a handful of Marvel films, like, maybe they saw The Winter Soldier and maybe they saw like one of the Spider-Man films and that's it. And they hopped right into Endgame and they came to see it with me. They loved the film, but there were many times where they were like tapping my shoulder, like, who was that character again? Or
yeah, I mean, of course.
How did they end up?
But they still enjoyed it though.
When did they partner up? Wait, when did they become a part?
Hey, guess what? It's a commercial that they got to go back and watch other films, but they still enjoyed it though. They still enjoyed it. They still understood what happened. They understood a decent. They still understood the basic story, though. I know some of the same thing, and they still enjoyed it because they.
But
saw
again, it's not everyone's cup of tea. Of it could be frustrating.
That's anything, bro. That's anything. That's anything.
Like,
that's anything. That's anything.
To, like, check out all, see this and this to understand, this.
You don't. That's extra stuff, though, and that's true. Yes, that's gonna happen, but.
So
you can still understand you can still understand as long as you understand the main conflict and what's going on. Yeah, all that side stuff, but that's extra stuff. But it's kind of like you watch some of the Nolan films, and then you're like, "Wait a second, I just understand." Then it kind of forces you to watch it again. It's like, I mean, there's different levels to this filmmaking. Some people are just surface level. Some people have layers. Some people actually have depth. Some people just do an entertainment bullshit, and that's all they can't. They don't. They just copy. I'm just saying, there's a difference. But all I'm saying is I think audiences would have been ready for this a while back. It just had to do with who was in charge of the properties. I don't think it has to do with. I'm not saying that you can't do those other films, but I don't agree that they wouldn't be ready. They just weren't. They just didn't have that opportunity because no one was making those films. But yeah, it set the precedent. But I don't think. I think people can be ready for a lot of things. Someone has to make it. You know what I'm saying? Like, until people see it, then they're ready for it. You know what I'm saying? So,
no, anyway, the reason why I say that is because I understand where you're coming from. Is that not just in superhero films. I'll make 2 points. One, in connecting it to what you were saying with comic books, and having those same parties explicitly involved in that process. Another good example of that is what we have with novels. We do have, authors many times like involved in the adaptation, a lot of times, not all the time, but there are cases where you have the authors of, a novel that's being adapted, involved in the filmmaking process of whatever that adaptation is. They're consulted a lot of times on, what was your thought process here? But because it's a different medium, sometimes a lot of those things don't, cross-pollinate over, properly. So, in speaking to that idea of that authenticity piece, sometimes, it functions well to be able to adapt it versus making it explicitly, authentic to, the prior source material for a couple of reasons. One, because it's a different medium, and two,
of course, yeah.
And two, because, even for those that are familiar with the original source material, sometimes it can be boring to, see it play out exactly the same way versus having it, go a different direction sometimes, or them, acting in the spirit of what it's about. So that would be the general point that
I agree with you, but the sense of the interconnected story, that's still something that can work, not just in comics, and it's been proven it can work in films. And they have made those decisions. Like there have been changes, of course. There's tons of them of changing and tweaking stuff. Like you're not gonna have Iron Man fight. You're not gonna have Iron Man fight in the Vietnam War, and then you have no. I mean, that's how it was in the comics. But whatever they update, that's fine. But I'm not talking about that. I mean, that's always gonna happen for film because that's why I always debate. I laugh when people are like, "Oh, the book is better than the movie." I'm like, you're reading
a different medium.
I'm like, that you're reading pages and you have to think of the imagery. And a movie is like a visual is 1,000 words. Like you don't have I'm like, it's not the same medium. I'm like, it's an adaptation. It's not a translation. I guess I bet you the closest thing that would make those people understand, enjoy it more would maybe a miniseries. That's why you get a miniseries because at least you could do more. But still, regardless, it's an adaptation. You can't put everything like those Harry Potter films. I enjoyed them. They didn't once the fourth one hit. I mean, they're starting to
the books,
take a lot of
this,
but they're starting to take once the fourth one hits, they really start taking out a lot of stuff and not putting. But it's like that movie's gonna be ridiculously long. Of course, they have to cut stuff out. But it's people. I think some people don't understand that and whatever. But whatever. Everyone, if you want to read a book, read a book.
And then I'll also say with this because and talking about folks that being ready. For what you're getting is thinking of a lot of cult favorite films that at the time people were not responding to, and then after a rewatch years later they're like, oh wow, like now I understand now what the intent was, or it gets a second life, so to speak, when initially it wasn't as popular. A good case in point of that, I know at the time of talking about people being ready is my favorite film of all time, and I talk about it all the time here on the show, is John Carpenter's The Thing. I love that movie. It still holds up to this day. And at the time, it was coming out in the time where we were having E.T. and all these other alien films where they wanted aliens to be cuddly and nice and your best friend, and that wasn't what The Thing was, but it's an awesome movie. But years later, it's gotten a second life because people appreciate all the other things that it brings to the table as a horror film, as a thriller of the themes that it introduces of paranoia and disease and all these other facets that it touches on that people didn't really scratch the surface of then when it first came out, and now years later are now at a point that they are able to appreciate it and grasp it. So I was
I agree. I mean, you have to. That happens. I mean, that's what happens a lot. I mean, Scarface I don't think did well at the box office, and that became a cult classic. But I think also became bigger because, in the hip hop industry, they get all these gangster rappers. They're look up to that. But I mean, was Al Pacino really he's not. It's just funny. Al Pacino's a great actor, but it's I thought he did pretty good. But he wasn't even. Was he really Cuban? But doesn't matter. Sometimes even if you're not even that authentic or whatever, it's just the performance. You're it's just so iconic. You're who cares? But yeah, that's what happens sometimes with some of these. What was it? I think another one that became there's a few that have that get that status. Fight Club is probably another one because I remember that didn't do well. I don't even think it did well in theaters, but on DVD it did well. But
because I remember the thing going back to
the trailer was a mess.
That killed on I want to say it killed on VHS and it killed on cable too. Because I remember it used to come on cable all the time.
Fight Club?
So, I would see it. No, The Thing. So I would watch it all the time. It would be on TV all the time. So I would watch it all the time. So
anyway.
But anyway, that'll wrap up our edition of This Week in Review. As I said, we like to get super passionate about our discussion of movie critique.
Hopefully they do it. Hopefully DC improves. That's all I was at. I wish Warner Brothers Discovery well, and I hope they get on track. And I think they can. But
agreed.
I would just say this at the end. I really want to know if they're going to try and specifically separate the brand, because like I said, the branding of these. Because really, if you think about it, there's 3 different types of DC franchises going on simultaneously. If they're going to continue, you have the DCEU, you have the Batman, whatever that's going to be, I guess, and then if they make more films like the Joker, I feel like that's what you have. And I don't know. I wonder if they're going to separate that because to me, that's going to be more confusion if they don't do that for the average person. But anyway, I hope I wish them success, and I hope it works out.
Agreed.
So,
we can agree on that for sure. So with that being said, that's going to wrap up this edition of This Week in Review. Thanks so much for tuning in and checking out a lot of these episodes of us, me and Jerome, going back and forth of our critique of film and TV and talking about a lot of the other, news bits, across different other mediums too of what's happening, in entertainment business or other facets as well. So before we wrap up here, Jerome, I will punt it over to you. Can you tell folks where they can find you?
Yeah, definitely. You can find me at JW Bourgeois 21 on Twitter and Instagram. You also can find us for Movers and Shakers Unlimited on Instagram at Movers Shakers Unlimited. Below. Also, we're on Twitter and Facebook at Move and Shake UNLTD. That's Move and Shake UNLTD. See it below. And obviously, like Brandon said earlier, if you want to support us on Patreon, patreon.com/Movers Unlimited. On YouTube, like, subscribe, comment, click the little bell so you can get the feed. And, share with your family, friends, and let us know what you want us to comment on, talk about, cover. We're trying to hit that goal still. So tell everybody subscribe on YouTube. And, we'll let you know about there's some stuff coming up you might see on YouTube Shorts too. We try to switch it up with some of the posts. So just look out for that.
All right, indeed. So I'm your host and your co-creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited, Brandon Choi. You can find me on Twitter at Brandon Choi ENT, just down below. You can also find me on Instagram at Brandon Choi _ENT. And just as Jerome said, thank you guys so much for tuning in to a lot of the content that we bring you guys. We're really passionate about all the things that we, share with you. I don't know if that reads, but, we definitely are, whether it's with what we have with our, coverage of sports more recently with the Super Bowl, want to be doing more in that arena. So be on the lookout for that. But also even with, some of our other content as well, whether it's in film with our coverage of film festivals or just individual films, TV, as well as, different expos, whether it's, car shows or conventions as well. And there's going to be a great deal more of that going into this year as well. So make sure you stay tuned for that. And then in the meantime, it helps us out a great deal. Make sure that you hit that subscribe button down below. We are on pace to hit, that goal of 1,000 subscribers. So super appreciate it if you guys do that, and to also pass it along to, other folks that, enjoy that same type of content that we provide, and pass that information along to them to also subscribe. So with that out of the way, thank you guys so much for watching. Be safe out there and see you soon. Peace.
Peace out.